So in this video, I want to go through a few key things that I feel helped me to improve my UCAT test. It's now been approximately like two years since I've taken the test, and when I first began doing the preparation for the test, I felt like there was a few things that made it easier for me to take the test. One of them was I did a practice test before I began my revision. So the first thing that I recommend is to take out maybe 2 months. Right now, hopefully when this video is out, you still have quite a bit of time to take the test, hopefully over 4 weeks or so. The first thing is to go onto the UCAT website and to take the test there first. Do a demo test. The exams there are quite hard. I felt like verbal reasoning was very similar, but the other parts like quantitative reasoning and decision making, I felt like they were a lot harder than the actual test, just to gauge your overall level of readiness for the exam. And once you do this, depending on your score, it then gives you a lot more info as to how long you need to properly get ready for the test. For some people, I've known that they were able to use 2 weeks, but me personally, I felt like that was way too short a period to get ready for the test. I think anything from 4 weeks plus, that's fine. Some people 4 weeks is perfect. For me, 4 weeks was not enough. I felt like for me, 7 weeks was the perfect time for me, because when I first did that practice test, I was able to realize that my score was horrible and I would need a lot more time to get ready for the test. The number one resource you need for the UCAT is Medify. Of course, there's books as well, but me personally, Medify is the best resource right now for taking the test. It has loads of questions, a massive question bank. There's loads of demo tests, and it's really like the only resource I've used, but I felt that most of the tests closely resemble the actual UCAT test. It's also been constantly updated, so that most of the questions there, they'll be very closely similar to what you'll actually get. They also have good customer service, so you're able to call them. There's a community forum there as well to talk to people that are taking the test. So overall, it's just the most up-to-date resource that I've used, and I feel like that's the core foundation, the core piece that you would need to be able to properly prepare for the UCAT. So just some realities before you begin your revision. You've most likely seen the videos on YouTube where someone gets 800 or 900, but just this is not a realistic score, and not all unis expect you to get above 700 for you to get an offer. Assuming that most of your other requirements, your GCSE grades, your A-level grades, assuming that they're sufficient, you wouldn't need to do amazingly on your UCAT test. All you need to do is to get a good enough score to pass the threshold for most unis. I believe anything from maybe 630 to 650 is something to aim for. Of course, if you do better, that's great. If you do worse than that, then it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get a place, but of course it's better to be on the safe side. It does fluctuate year in and year out, so just keep that in mind. So how do you actually get started? So once you've figured out what your average score is, let's say your score is anything under 600, then I would say you're around the same level as me when I first began. So I would say at least 6 or 7 weeks would be a good enough time for you to properly get focused. On the first week, read through all of the written contents on the Medify website, as well as that, watch some YouTube videos. Then once you've done that, start doing practice questions that aren't timed, just for you to get a quick feel of everything that you need to do, how the questions look, the kind of things that they would ask of you. And also during this whole period of you going through all of the written contents and doing these questions that are not timed, I would recommend maybe 3 to 5 days for these questions during your first week of revision. I do recommend that you do some piece of UCAT work every single day, but of course you don't need to spend a whole day working, maybe 1 to 3 hours. That's a good time range for most days, but definitely even on the weekends, do a few questions here and there just to keep your mind ready and focused. But of course, if you do feel like you're approaching burnout, take a few days off and come back stronger. So yeah, once you've done those few practice questions and you've read the written content on the Medify website, then you pretty much know what's expected of you and the kind of questions that you will get on the UCAT test. So after that first week, you now have maybe 6 or so weeks left. So each week, I recommend just going through as many questions as you can from each of the 4 sections. Me personally, from my experience of each section, I felt that with verbal reasoning, there was some tests and demo tests and main tests on the Medify website that was fairly similar to the actual exam, but overall I felt that verbal reasoning was a bit easier on the Medify website. So for verbal reasoning, try and focus on the main UCAT website for verbal reasoning. For decision making, it's pretty much the same as Medify. For quantitative reasoning, it was the same as well. In fact, I felt that Medify was even a bit harder. On the main UCAT day, for quantitative reasoning, I felt that for me personally, I found it a lot easier. Most of the questions there, I didn't even need to use the calculator. Then moving on to situational judgment, I felt that Medify was a bit easier again. The UCAT website is pretty much the same for situational judgment, so focus on the UCAT website's demo tests and tests for situational judgment. I would try not to focus on demo tests yet. Try not to focus on any of the practice tests until, let's say, a week or so before your test dates. So when that day comes up, let's say like you have 2 weeks left, then save all of the UCAT and practice tests. I think there's maybe 8 of them. So start doing them at least one a day when you have 2 weeks left. So I would do maybe on Monday, do a practice test. Tuesday, just do normal questions. Wednesday, then do another practice test, and so on like that, especially those last 2 weeks, because once you've reached that period, you'll pretty much be very ready. And if you're not ready, then doing those practice tests will definitely get you a lot more confidence. So when you come to the actual 2-hour practice test day, you'll be a lot more used to how the exam works. And that's the main thing here, to reduce fear, to just practice as much as possible and do it under time conditions. The Medify websites, they pretty much do everything perfectly when it comes to doing the practice test. It's timed there for you, so you don't need to do anything. Find a quiet place and then go and carry out those questions. If you feel like you're not ready for your test, then just reschedule. I spent 6 weeks getting ready for my test, and when it reached my test day a few days before, I felt like I was not ready, so I rescheduled for the week after. And I felt like that last week that I rescheduled made me feel a lot more confident, because during that period I was able to do a few more demo tests. I was able to get through a lot more questions on quantitative reasoning, which I felt was my worst section, and that was even the best section that I ended up doing better in. Overall, on my UCAT score, I got like 667.5. When it reaches your test day, you're still gonna have some fear, but it's okay. At some points during your revision, during the last few days, you'll feel like you're about to burn out. You'll feel like you've done way too much, and when you've reached that period, then don't reschedule again, because at that point it will not do you any good. I reached that point 2 days before my UCAT test. I felt like I could not do any more work at all, and that's when I realized that in fact it might have been better if I did the test a few days before, because at that point I was basically reaching my limit of the amount of tests that I can do. And I feel like once you reach that stage of burnout, the next few days of work, you slowly start to decline. The quality of your questions, your thinking, they slowly start to go down. So reschedule if you don't feel confident. Only you can know yourself. If you feel like you can't do this anymore for a few days, then just take the test, because at that point you having a few more days to work won't do you any good. It'll just decrease your ability to do well on the test. Quick tips. So for this section, these are just a few things that I felt really helped me. So of course I've gone through all the sections already and how I felt Medify helped to prepare for them, and and how closely similar they were to the actual test. But on the test day, you have to be very stubborn. If you feel like you don't know the answer, or you don't know the method to work out the answer for a question, then just skip it and move on. Flag it and move on, especially for quantitative reasoning, decision making, really just any section. If you feel like the question you see will take you too long, then flag it and move on, and then do all of the easier questions first. You really need to get good at doing this. This exam, there will be questions that may take you 2 or 3 minutes average, and some others that will take you maybe 10 or 20 seconds, and they both give you the same exact mark. They're both 1 mark, so it's better that you spend your time doing all of the easy questions first and then come back and do the harder questions. As you go through Medify, you'll see the average time it took users to do those questions, and for some of them they may even be up to 3 minutes. Now you cannot spend 3 minutes on any question on the UCAT. I think 30 seconds, that should be your limit. So you will see those questions as well on the day of the test. Some questions that may take you up to 2 or 3 minutes, so just be ready to flag those questions and move on. And you may not even be able to answer them at all, but as long as you've used all of your time to really focus on the easier questions and then the less easier questions, then you know that you've put all of your time and you've used it wisely. Because even those 2-minute questions, there's no guarantee that you will be able to get the right answer for those questions, so just bear that in mind. Of course, everyone wants to get everything right, but that's not realistic on the test. It's all about time management and using your time as efficiently as possible. So be ready to flag and move on. Whatever score you get, be happy. As long as you follow this method in some shape or form, then you know that you've done everything that you can to be ready for this test. For me, the score I got, I wasn't too happy with it. With all the work I put in, 6 or 7 weeks, I was expecting something like 750, 800, but of course, I don't feel everyone can reach those scores, but I do know that I did everything I could to get the score that I got. Of course, for some people, the score may not be impressive at all. For others, maybe it would. So, everyone is different, but as long as you've done everything you can, then there's not much more that you can ask for. Just focus on the other sections of your application for medicine, and, hopefully you'll be able to get that place that you need. Yeah, guys, if you have any other questions or any other comments, then please leave it in the comments below. Leave me some suggestions for videos that you'd like to see. If you're new here, then please feel free to like this video, subscribe for more, and I'll hopefully try and be more consistent this summer. Good luck.